Good evening, this is Ajan John here. The expression "it's all in the mind" means that thoughts do not necessarily represent reality. Thoughts may be wrong. For example, suppose you have a friend who is always looking in the mirror and saying, "My nose is too long" or "My ears are too small." But when you look at him, he looks quite normal, quite average. You might say to him then, "It's all in your mind," meaning his thoughts do not represent reality. Of course, we can get into a very philosophical conversation, about what it means for thoughts to represent reality. But for the time being, I'm going to use a common sense definition, which is that most people would agree that this is or is not realistic. So we are talking here about use of the imagination, a skill which only human beings have as far as we know. As far as we know, we are the only species who can create ideas and use these ideas to influence our behavior. So do we use the imagination in a good or a bad way? Obviously there are many times when we do use it in a bad way. The example I gave previously about the man who is worried about his appearance is one example. But I am sure you can find many in your own life. And on the positive side, we use our imagination to investigate and create things. All of our technology comes from people who used their imagination to search for causes or to pursue dreams. There is a large and influential body of thought which tells us that the mind is quite malleable, meaning we can in some way choose what we think. The school of positive thinking, for example, which tells you you can be the person you want to be just by thinking. And Buddhism tells us that we should be careful of thoughts which may lead us into situations where we suffer pain. Sometimes thoughts and our imagination are totally negative. For example, if I have an exam tomorrow, I can't help but think about it, even though I know this thinking is useless. I have already done all my revision, and thinking about it more is not going to help me pass the exam, but nevertheless I will certainly be thinking about it until I go to bed tonight, and maybe even in my dreams. On the positive side, imagination can be used to create very pleasurable stories and fantasies. The movies we watch on TV, the books we read, are all the products of other people's imaginations. So here is my essay question today. Human beings can be distinguished from the other animals by our faculty of imagination. Do you think we use this in a positive or negative way? So, first paragraph. Imagination is our ability to create ideas. They may come from our experience of the world, or they may be total fantasy. We can then use these ideas to plan our futures, choose how we behave, and make almost every decision in our lives. Our imagination is responsible for almost every action we take in this world. Now moving on to the second paragraph, we can choose either to say the imagination is positive or negative. I think I'm going to choose negative for the second paragraph. I don't have any particular reason for this, but I have to make a choice, so let's go for negative. We can often see that the imagination is used in an extremely harmful way. For example, ideas created by our imaginations have been responsible for wars, genocide, racial hatred, and many more terrible things which have happened during our history and are still happening now. Now I'm going to give an example. During the Second World War, for example, Nazi Germany, led by Hitler, tried to exterminate the Jews. He believed that the Jews were responsible for many of the problems experienced by German people, and planned a society in which these people would cease to exist. By the end of the war in 1945, Hitler had succeeded in killing millions of Jews and other people who he thought were not a beneficial part of his society. Notice I have just used the past perfect tense. This is an extreme example, but by no means unusual. There are many other examples in history where ideas and ideology have been used to commit terrible atrocities. Okay, moving on to the third paragraph. On the other hand, imagination has also given us movies, Beethoven, technology, and a modern world filled with pleasure. Movies, for example, probably the most popular form of entertainment in the world today, consist of many genres, G-E-N-R-E-S. We have everything from romantic comedies to horror movies to entertain us and thrill us. And these are all the creation of people's imagination. All of the scientific discoveries which have led to the incredible technology we have nowadays also stem from people's thinking. If people did not think and imagine, we would never have made the discoveries which have led to things like electricity and nowadays the internet. And last paragraph, conclusion. In conclusion, the imagination can be used in a positive or negative way, and how we choose to take advantage of this incredible faculty of this incredible faculty is something we need to constantly question ourselves about. So that's the end of the essay. So what about you? Do you use your imagination in a positive or a negative way? And can you see when you are doing either? Are you self-aware that you are using your thoughts in a positive or negative way? And how do you know the difference? Can you rely upon yourself? Do you think you can see reality through your own mind's eye? Or do you rely upon friends to give you advice about whether you are thinking clearly or not? Personally, I think it's very useful to get input from other people, especially people who you can rely upon to be honest and frank and do not have their own strange imagination. Also, you can get ideas from other sources, movies, books, listening to radio programs, anything which will give you some new ways of looking at yourself and the world will help you to see the boundaries of reality. I think in fact the The problem of what is real and what is imaginary is something we have to continually investigate throughout our lives until the day we die. I know personally I am often surprised at finding my thought patterns going askew, A-S-K-E-W. However, I have to say I'm not a great fan of the positive thinking schools. I think actually they often just try to substitute unrealistic ideas rather than to get to some objective reality. Anyway, I'm sure you have your own thoughts on this subject, so maybe you might like to make a comment. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.